Hi and welcome back to Wheelsville. This week I thought we'd mix things up a little bit and bring in a guest into the shed. Now I've got here a chap who once walked all the way from Cardiff, Wales to Cardiff, Australia. Arjun, welcome to the shed.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming. I think the most obvious question, why the hell did you walk from Cardiff, Wales to Cardiff, Australia?
I asked myself that, I did ask myself that question every day. It started off at university. It was like our final year of university, and we'd found out about the charity Water Aid. And we reread about families that were walking like sometimes tens of kilometers a day to source their own water. And with that kind of in the back of our head, a few weeks later, we were talking about, it was a Scandinavian guy who had converted his car engine to take something other than oil, take something other than petrol, and he was driving that around the world. And there was like another couple who were like cycling around the world. So we kind of put two and two together. We kind of jokingly in the kitchen asked ourselves, like, how long would you reckon it would take to walk around the world? And it kind of snowballed into an actual thing that we found ourselves on like the beginning of April in 2012 outside Cardiff Castle going, we've got to do this now. Like
I'm guessing booze was involved in that decision as well.
There may have been. Yeah, there was a few beers, and yeah, eventually it kind of panned out, I think.
Okay, and when you set off, did you kind of seriously think that you would, get to Cardiff, Australia, or did you just think, right, let's just go and see how?
No, not at all. Like at every border, we thought, this is it. This will be the end. Especially the Russia one. We were like, Russia aren't going to let us in. Like we'd had some sponsors that helped us, and we got like business visas to go across, and we were just like, yeah, they're not going to let us in. And the first thing he said was, do you have any bombs? No. Do you have any guns? No. Welcome to Russia. And we were like, oh, okay. Now we've got to walk across Russia.
and how did you plan the route then? Did you have an idea, or did you just kind of...
Yeah, so like I said before, we had some sponsors that came on board, and they required like an actual set-up route. So we kind of just sat on Google Maps and went, yeah, this way, this way, this way. And then eventually it took all of like maybe all the way to, like it only took to France, and then we just kind of went off route completely.
Okay.
So yeah, we just kind of made it up 2 countries ahead, and we did our visas like that as well.
And how far did you get until you thought, oh, this isn't much fun?
Probably Kazakhstan, because it was like the first like hurdle that we faced. Up until then, it had just been like Audis and Spas at every turn. It was great. And then Russia hit, and it was like minus 35. And we had the cold weather gear, so we were okay. But then we got to Kazakhstan, and it was just flat desert. And sometimes there were like 300 kilometers between towns. So we had to like push our own water and food and things. And we were like, yeah, we're definitely out of our depth here. Right. We have not prepared for this whatsoever.
But you did get to Cardiff, Australia in the end. How long did it take, the whole journey?
The original journey was planned to take 3 years. That's what we came up with in the kitchen. It eventually ended up taking me 5 years, 1 month and 3 days.
Wow. God. And what about, so logistically, did you carried a tent with you and just pitched up wherever every night? Yeah, so like about 90% of the whole trip was camping, either in a tent, in a bivvy. Not the biggest fan of bivvies. Hammocks. So at people's homes, people were really generous and kind of sometimes just let me stay in their home. And would you just throw your tent on the side of the road, or would you kind of try and keep out of the way? Or?
Yeah, you tend to try and keep out of the way, because sometimes when you're in particular countries that aren't quite safe, people will try and mess with you in the night and stuff. And so you kind of, I tend to just kind of get at least maybe a kilometre off the road and kind of just, so it's nice and quiet and I'm out of the way.
But you must have had a few kind of dicey run-ins, I'm sure.
During camping time, I think I did quite well in terms of picking spots, but every now and again there would be a situation where mainly involved guns. Like in Poland, I woke up in the morning, unzipped the tent, and there was just 2 men with like shotguns outside the tent. I think they were hunting, but it was just a real jarring scene of just seeing 2 men with shotguns outside your tent and some dogs. And we're like, morning. And then again in Afghanistan, unfortunately, this is one of the things that kind of went wrong, and border walkers ended up being taken in the middle of the night by 7 men with AK-47s just screaming at me. And they were kind of bundled into a 4x4 and driven for like 40 minutes. At that point, I was like, this is why they said not to go to Afghanistan. They said it would happen. I didn't listen.
Yeah.
And now I'm I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Yeah, I know. Go for it. Swear as much as you like.
And now I'm fucked. And so, but like 40 minutes later, I get chucked out, and it ends up it's a military checkpoint. They're just plainclothes military guys with AK-47s running around town. So sometimes it goes wrong, but the majority of the case it's kind of quite quiet and yeah.
In Afghanistan, did you kind of feel like you needed to creep around and kind of?
Yeah, I was told to get off the road. As soon as like the sun started setting, just to get off the road because the roads became the property of the Taliban. So I was there at that kind of time when the forces were kind of leaving. So I'd see like military vans every now and again coming and going, but apart from that, it was just walk. Try not to talk to too many people. A lot of people would stop, and a lot of people would say, "What are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need any help?" Unfortunately, some people would say, "I've just taken a video of you. I'm going to put it on Facebook," and drive off. And you're like, "No, that's not what I want." So eventually, out of all that, it turned out that the Taliban knew of a British national that was walking through the area, so they had come to get me before the Taliban did. So it was kind of like a weird rescue. But it didn't have to be that dramatic. At the time, I was like, "Oh, here we go. I'm gonna end up in a dodgy YouTube video." Yeah,
like this. Get ready for this question. You must have tried. Along the way, what were you eating? Like a load of local cuisine, or were you just living off kind of bread and cheese? Yeah.
So. Unfortunately, it wasn't like really diverse cuisine, like because the last thing you want to do on the road is suddenly have a dodgy stomach and then be like, on the side of the road. Unfortunately, it did happen at one point. We got dysentery because of like lack of sanitation and the kind of the water that we were drinking. We ended up getting dysentery on the road for like the last half of Kazakhstan. But apart from that, it was essentially just kind of meats and breads and water essentially. So like the daily budget was really low. We just kind of did like weekly shoppings and just kind of took it all with us. Okay. When I was on my own, essentially just did the same, but just everything on my back.
And your friend dropped out kind of, I guess, halfway through, or maybe...
Yeah, so we came up with the idea in the kitchen at uni together, and then it was a year and a half in, and we had some issues with the police in Kyrgyzstan. We ended up going to jail for a few days. The police there were quite corrupt, so we ended up the embassy had to help us get out and stuff. So then after that, he decided to call it a day, and he went home. And then so I carried on for 3 years, and then in Perth, in Australia, he came back out to walk the final leg across Australia with me.
Okay. And how was it for you kind of walking by yourself and then finding yourself completely alone?
Yeah, I think that was probably, a lot of people ask me like what the hardest part of border walk was, and that was probably be that part. Essentially, when Kieran left, I was like alone in a country for the first time on my own. I'd never been abroad alone. And so I was kind of just in this hostel going, oh, now I'm going to walk through Afghanistan. And then it was probably the coldest environment I'd ever been in Kyrgyzstan. The first day I had to set off solo, it was like minus 35 in the mountains in Kyrgyzstan alone. So it kind of just became a really lonely place for a good while until I eventually got to Kabul. Yeah.
Okay. And how many countries do you think you actually crossed through altogether?
20 countries.
20?
Yeah.
You'd think it would actually be more, wouldn't you? I mean,
yeah, I know. Yeah, right.
and the kind of the route that you took, you made sure that you were kind of never skipping. If you were using boats or flights, I'm guessing you would never...
Yeah, so essentially it was all boats, like the Channel Tunnel and stuff, and then, from England to France, boat, and then from Singapore to Indonesia, and then all the island chains, essentially all the way to Bali via boat. And I wanted to try and get a boat from Bali to Australia, but... It takes a long time to plan, and I had 2 days left on the visa when I got to Bali, and one day was like I just had to do like press and like interviews and stuff. So I secondly had 1 day to try and plan stuff, so it wasn't going to work out. So I ended up having to get a flight from Bali to Perth.
Okay. Yeah. Worst country?
Worst country? I don't know if there's like a worse country. Like the country I didn't have the most fun in would probably be Pakistan.
Right.
I kind of got grilled at the border for a very long time about being of Indian origin.
Right.
As you can tell, Indian origin. But my parents were born in Kenya. My grandparents were the ones born in India, and that really confused the general at the border. And so we had a very strange situation where he was just asking me questions, and he found like a SIM card holder, and it's probably on the blog somewhere, but like the SIM card number looked like it said mission, like jumbled up letters looked like it said mission. So he spent about 40 minutes asking me what mission I was on. So it just wasn't going well. And he told me like my camera was illegal, my GPS was illegal, my phone was illegal. And then, so I got passed around I think it was maybe like 6 or 7 other people like being questioned, and then eventually left. But it was just it's just a really intimidating country as somebody of like Indian origin.
Yeah.
They just have and I imagine it's the same from anybody of a Pakistani origin in India. It's the same. But yeah, it wasn't totally comfortable being in that environment.
Do you kind of feel lucky that you actually did manage to complete it then?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those situations where sometimes just off of luck alone, things just happen to work out.
Yeah.
And I think you can prepare as much as you want, but eventually you're just going to come down to luck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And blisters, that's such a crap question.
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Really?
Every day.
What, right from the start?
It took maybe about so it was different for both of us. So when I began and I was walking with my friend, we kind of alternated for somehow. Like it was like he would have blisters and then I would like, come on, you could do it. And then I'd have blisters. He'd be like, come on, you can do it. And then eventually you'd think your feet would harden up and stuff. But I was just like kind of applying moleskin and like eventually I ran out of that and there's nowhere to buy that in Kazakhstan. So I was just like taping up my feet with duct tape and just going, yeah.
How many pairs of shoes then?
12.
Really?
And a pair of sandals that we don't talk about. Turns out it was a terrible idea.
Really?
But it was just so hot. I just needed something, so yeah.
And when you got to Cardiff, Australia, how did that feel?
Surreal, strange, because it became a way of, it became a way of life eventually. Like a year and a half in, 2 years in, it was just what you did normally. I think it was one of those things that you just acclimatized to. And even my parents would be like, oh, where's Arjun? Go give him a call. And and so after when I'd finished, I was kind of, in a way, kind of lost purpose. Like this whole thing of making distance every day. And you just didn't have that to do anymore. So like the first 3 days, I think I slept for like 3 days straight. It was the best sleep I've ever had in nearly like 6 years. And then, and then I just felt like I was wasting my time every day of just not making distance. So I'd just like walk to the beach or walk through the city or we'll go for a long walk somewhere.
But what did you do when you actually, what did you set as your finish point? Was it the beach at Cardiff? Or?
The finish point was essentially the Cardiff town
sign.
Plaque. Yeah. So that was our finish point. And then I did an extra, because I didn't know what I'm going to be doing now, so I did an extra 15 kilometers to the beach. Right. So I did like coast to coast of Australia. So the border walk finish was Cardiff sign, the Cardiff Cardiff town, and then my finish point was just like at the beach. Right.
I've got to say though, a sign saying Cardiff in kind of, I don't know what Cardiff, Australia is like, but it's not the most well-known of towns, is it?
Yeah, it's essentially like a small Cardiff, but without a castle. So we were like, there's no castle for us to go to. Well, the next best thing is just this plaque that says Cardiff.
I'm guessing it was, in a way, slightly underwhelming, or...
Oh yeah, like people were always looking at us going, why are you going to Cardiff for? And we were like, you don't get it. We came from Cardiff. And they'd be like, oh. Right. We were like, in our head, it was this genius thing. We're like, Cardiff to Cardiff, get it? But yeah, they were just like, have you been to Cardiff? And we're like, nope. And they're like, well, okay.
Yeah. But along the way, when people asked you where you were walking, and you told them you were walking Cardiff, Wales to Cardiff, Australia, how did they react to that?
It kind of goes one of a few ways. Like one of them is like they just skip over that and go, okay, yeah, and then carry on talking. And then it's like a few minutes later, you go back to it and they're like, oh, so you're walking. And you're like, yeah, because I think that you're like hitchhiking or something, or like, you just don't own a car or something, or a bike. And then the other one is just, they don't understand how you could be doing that. And then they want to know every detail. So you end up stood at the side of the road for like half an hour having this conversation. And it's great because they're just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, and that's how I met a lot of people that even kind of joined me, like for a few days walking or a few weeks walking even.
Really?
I met a Portuguese girl in India who walked with me for like a month. I met a Welsh guy in Delhi who walked with me for 2 weeks. There's like various families that walked with me for like a week at a time.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and mainly it would just be people like meeting them on the side of the street,
Okay.
and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I tell them, like, "Oh my god, come and have dinner, stay at my house," and we'd have a discussion, and be like, "I'm gonna walk in a few days with you." Like, grab their bag and just out the door.
So you've just got back to the UK, haven't you?
Yeah.
How does it feel to kind of? It must have taken 24 hours to fly back, and it took you 5 years to get there. That must be quite a strange.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Should have just done that in the first place.
Yeah, and also jet lag is real. Like I've never been on a flight that long. Like because I walked there, there's never a flight that long, and so like I did the flight for the first time on my way back to the UK, and I was out for like 2 days. Yeah, I was like just going to bed at like 3 o'clock in the morning, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just like yeah.
So I've probably asked you a few of them. What is the question that you get asked the most? Probably every single question I've asked you.
Well, yeah, I think it's a case of like they go from the beginning and then it's a series of questions they ask along the way. So it's like, how many shoes did you go through?
Yeah.
How many like the distance you went through? How many countries you went through?
Check, yeah.
But like it's just the interesting part of boardwalk. It's just it's what I would ask if somebody said that they were doing something. I met a guy who was. Recently doing a talk in Canary Wharf, I met a guy who had unicycle around the world, and I just did the same thing. I was like, how many kilometers did you do? Like, how many tires did you go through? Like, everything. And he'd probably been asked that questions every day for the last like year.
All right, well, this is probably when you've probably been asked everything under the sun, but maybe this one not so much. I mean, you had a lot of thinking time to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Did you discover the meaning of life along the way?
No, not at all. No,
well, that's disappointing. Got you in here, all the way here. Right, thanks very much.
Yes, cheers.
Great to have you in.
Cheers, man. Cheers for having me.
Thanks. Yeah.
What's your normal sign?
I'm not really like, well, thanks very much for tuning in to Will's World. Stick your comments below. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Like, subscribe.
Catch you next week. There we go.
That will